Yeah, so can I blow? This is a time when we're not thinking of blowing. We're just thinking of even giving a small light. എങ്ങനെങ്കിലും ഒന്ന് കത്തിയാൽ മതി, വലിയ പ്രകാശിക്കൊന്നും വേണ്ട, തട്ടിമുട്ടിയൊക്കെ ഒന്ന് പൊക്കോട്ട കാര്യങ്ങളല്ലേ. There were so many aspirations like shared here. And a couple of my friends were supposed to get married during this time, and they're still wondering when will this happen. കല്യാണം എന്ന് കഴിക്കാൻ പറ്റും. I'm sure some of you guys are already preparing for your wedding. From what Sajjashin said, this is what I understand. And this is a time when we are thinking, what എങ്ങനെയെങ്കിലും ഒക്കെ കാര്യങ്ങളൊന്ന് ശരിയായി കിട്ടിയാൽ മതി എന്ന് വിചാരിക്കുന്ന ഒരു സമയം. എന്നാൽ the word of God very definitely tells us that His glory has not gone, His glory has not become dim, even during this situation. As we move forward, we understand and we'll explore together the text taken from the Gospel according to St. John, chapter 2, verses 1 to 11. I would read verse 11 as an introduction. This, the first of his miraculous signs, Jesus performed at Cana in Galilee. He thus revealed his glory, and his disciples put their faith in him. John?
All right. So, my dear friends, so during this time, during this pandemic, we are looking for words of hope and we are trying to understand God all the more. Now, the problem is no matter how much we speak about God, it will always be broken speech. The early church fathers, when they wrote about commentaries in the Bible, they continually remind us that speaking about God is at best broken speech. And because God is transcendent and mysterious, and we are experiencing that now. Where is God? What is he doing? He's transcendent and mysterious. And at best, what we're going to say through all our theology, through all our sermons, through all our messages are broken speech. That's what the early church fathers said. But the beauty is, even through those broken pieces, the glory of God shines. The fact that Jesus Christ became flesh, the infinite God took human body and his glory shone through him, gives us hope that even through our limitations, God's glory is able to shine. So we're gonna talk about two main things today, and that is from the Gospel according to John, and there are a lot of things that we'll say in between, but two main emphasis, and we hope you will be blessed. So we know we're going through a time of suffering and the pandemic. James H. Cone, the founder of what is known as Black theology, he said, faith is born out of suffering, and suffering is faith's most powerful contradiction. This is the Christian dilemma. We're all in a dilemma. What next? How do we go forward? And some of us are really suffering and struggling, especially being in the UAE and all the uncertainty that comes when you do not have an income and things like that. There are many people are suffering whom that we may know or may not know. But how do we go through this time? So let's turn to Gospel according to St. John. And നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എല്ലാവരും അറിയാം യോഹന്നാന്റെ സുവിശേഷം അല്ലേ? ടോമേച്ചൻ ജോണിനെ കുറിച്ച് ഒരു 2 വാക്ക് പറയാവോ? ജോണിനെ കുറിച്ച് ഒരു 2 വാക്കൊന്ന് പറയാവോ?
ജോൺ ഒരു വളരെ നല്ല മനുഷ്യനാണ്. ഈസ് എ വെരി നൈസ് ഗൈ ആൻഡ് ഫ്രണ്ട്ലി വിത്ത് എവരിബഡി. അല്ലേ? ജോൺ എന്റെ കൂടെ 8ാം ക്ലാസ്സിൽ പഠിച്ചതാണ്.
ആ ജോൺ അല്ല, നമ്മുടെ ഗോസ്പൽ അക്കോർഡിംഗ് ടു ജോണിനെ കുറിച്ച് 2 വാക്ക് അതാ ചോദിച്ചത്.
ഗോസ്പൽ അക്കോർഡിംഗ് ടു ജോൺ. Gospel according to St. John. Yeah, John is somebody who wrote the gospel in a time when philosophy was at its peak. We have the Alexandrian philosophy being the Alexandrians being heavily influencing the world, not only the Greek world, but they were strong in their philosophy and their vision towards life. And that is where we see the Gospel of St. John. Especially the first chapter is something that is really interesting. The features of John. John gives an introduction in the first chapter, which is the prologue. We could call it the prologue, and in that the whole thing is already embedded. He talks of the eternal nature of God revealed in Jesus.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now, where do we see in the beginning? We see that in Genesis already. So, for somebody who's reading Bible for the first time, or somebody who's reading, um, the Gospel for the first time, he's bringing them back to the beginning. And we're saying in the beginning, he was there in the beginning. Now we go on to say, created through Christ. Okay, all things came to being through Him, and without Him, there was nothing, and everything that was created was through Him. We go on to further see in chapter 1, verse 14. It says the Word became flesh and dwelt among men. So the Word made flesh, the Word of God made flesh and living among us as the presence of God and as purely human, which also says His glory was revealed. So glory of God was revealed. That is verse 17 that we see. The glory of God was revealed through Jesus. So when you read the first chapter itself, that gives a whole gist of what John is going to say. And John picked up the main crux of what the gospel is. And he goes on to say, if I am to, a lot of imageries are used. And John says, if I am to write of all that I saw and witnessed and experienced of Jesus, this wouldn't be enough. The books wouldn't be enough. And that's how we see John's gospel. We go on to see there are 7 signs that John talks about. John goes on to talk about 7 I am saying. These are the strong imageries that we see. Yeah, I am the vine, you are the branch, I am the bread of life. We know the 7 sayings, don't we? So John's gospel gives us, and it's interesting to see, a theologian says, remove the metaphors from the Bible, remove the imageries from the Bible, and its living spirit vanishes. Everybody used imageries. The prophets, the poets, the leaders of men are all of them who are masters of imagery, and by the imagery they capture the human soul. See that we very strongly see in the Gospel of Saint John.
Yeah, Achin. So it's very interesting that when we had this activity just now, we kept using a lot of metaphors and imageries to talk about, hope and glory. We saw doves, we saw trees, we saw Superman's cape with a cross on it, So now our understanding of reality comes through metaphors. And why do we use metaphors? Not everything can be stated the way it is. So to talk about something that cannot be described, you use a metaphor or you use an imagery so that it can speak volumes. It does not have to be limited to a particular word or job. So as we go forward, one of the things that we say, what we see as we begin John chapter 2 is on the 3rd day. Did any of you notice that? The story of Cana in Galilee starts by on the 3rd day. What comes to mind when we hear on the 3rd day? So what Tomiachan said just now needs to be in your mind. The verses 1 to 17, which functions like an introduction for Gospel according to John, is sort of the key or the clue that helps us to understand what is being said in the whole of John. And that is the key to unlock the different imageries as John goes on. And what do we have over here? We start with on the 3rd day, then there's a metaphor of the wedding. So what is the 3rd day? So John is beginning 3rd day at the beginning of the story. Why? Why, Ramyacha?
3rd day, I think, 3rd day definitely shows us and gives us the image of the resurrection of Christ. Yeah, it's the 3rd day that the crucified Christ is risen, and 3 therefore becomes highly imagery and symbolic of the resurrection and the glory that is to be revealed through Him, through the resurrection, and the eternal nature of God. Jesus was crucified. So you consider crucifixion as the first day. And after third day, there's no end to it. It is eternal. We say, Maranamillattavane ni parishuddhanavunu. Yeah. God, so the first point that we see here is, as we go on, Cana Glow, the first thing that we would like to emphasize on is the God of the Bible has no tomb. He is alive. The God of the Bible has no tombstone. He is alive.
Yeah.
Namalo,
So God of the Bible has no tombstone. So as we start this, as we begin our first point, we'd like to just remind you, as we go through this pandemic, God does not have a tombstone. And that's the first thing we'd like you to know. As we go, what does that mean? See, Genesis 1 begins by saying, in the beginning, God. John begins by saying, in the beginning, there was the Word. And on the third day, talks about the resurrection, where this God who, that symbol of the third day, which is of resurrection, goes to show that this God is eternal and he does not have an end. So this God who's at the beginning, he is known as the Alpha and the Omega. He is eternal. He has seen age after age. He has seen civilizations rise and fall. He has seen pandemics come and go. He has seen troubles come and go. He has seen death reigning over humanity, but now through Jesus Christ and his crucifixion, he gives his eternal nature to us. And as we go through this time, my dear friends, we want to remind you that this pandemic and the uncertainties that come with it are not the end. Your struggles may continue, but it is not the end. I don't know if I'll make it through the pandemic or whether you will make it through the pandemic. Whether we do or not, it is not the end, because God is eternal. He reigns on high. So as John begins to talk about the incident, he reminds us the God who's going to a camp, this God, Jesus Christ, who's going to Cana of Galilee, knowing that this could happen, he reminds us with an interpretive key that it is the God who resurrected on the third day. That third day metaphor is brought from the end to here, because John is written in retrospective perspective. He's written later. So he is interpreting that passage by saying the God of all life, the God of all provision, is walking into a wedding feast. So this understanding of God as eternal is something that keeps coming in our aradhana, in our worship. We begin by saying, glory be to the Father and to the Son and to the Holy Spirit. What does that mean? What is that like, Tomeja? There's a radio metaphor, isn't it? Radio.
Yes, it's the God who created us, the God who lived with us, and the God who is with us and who will be guiding us. So the continuum, it is a continuum. Holy are thou, Almighty Lord, holy art thou, immortal Lord. This is something that we need to keep in mind. When we are doing back in college, we had an acoustic team which used to sing a cappella. And one of the songs is an own composition. So the song said, which was the theme of, the time when we were in college. God, you got to seize the moment, hold it like you own it, get up and get moving. Time's the greatest opponent. Okay, so which means to say, you're asked to seize the moment. And there was this mobile network company back in those days. It was called Spice Network, and their punchline was, never miss an opportunity. So from seizing the moment, we have come into a stage when we are surviving each day, and this is where so many plans that we had, and now today we are hoping to just get through the day each day, and we are not able to see beyond. We are not able to control anything beyond, and this is where the eternal God God is this, I am the Alpha and Omega. He never sleeps, He never slumbers, He's never tired of hearing our prayers. So this is really important in that sense.
Yeah, so talking about this, my dear friends, so what we try to bring in over here is that our God is eternal. So earlier we used to say the slogan used to be seize the day, but today after this pandemic and what's going on in this economy right now, we are saying not seize the day, let's just survive the day. But John, as he presents Jesus Christ in chapter 1 and as he moves into chapter 2, it is not saying survive the day. He is trying to say from surviving to submission to the sovereign. Because this God's glory is always, it's eternal, it's going on. We need to just submit to that glory of God and allow Him to come into our lives, which we will see shortly in this particular story, that the glory of God is coming and emerging, through the life of these people. So from surviving, we need to move into a time of submission. So when we say the God of the Bible has no tombstone, we love to make tombstones for God because we take things into our hand. Every time we take things into our hands, we are creating a tombstone for God because God doesn't seem to be alive. Okay, I might as well take things into my hand and we create tombstones for God. But the truth is, my dear friends, God does not have a tombstone. He is eternally glorious. Every time worship happens, we are merely tuning into the worship that is going on in heaven. So we need to keep reminding ourselves that God is glorious. He is reigning on high. He is seated on the throne. And that is why if you see in a normal Aradhana, why? At that moment, we are tuning just like a radio tunes into a frequency that is around. Without this radio, you don't know that this frequency is hanging around us. But with a radio, okay, that's a radio, okay? Okay, with a radio, you are able to tune into that frequency where you tune into the glory of God. My dear friends, our God does not have a tombstone. So and that is how we get into the wedding metaphor, the second part. So the first thing that we'd like to tell you was God has no tombstone. Instead of seizing the day, instead of surviving the day, submit to the God so that we can become fountains of God's glory. Tomicha, there's a Burj Khalifa has a musical fountain, and apparently there is a very romantic music fountain where the fountain up near the Burj Khalifa, there's that waterfront over there, and then there's a very romantic way in which the romantic music is played. The fountain also sways like a lover. So apparently it's very good to see. But for us, we can also be fountains of God's glory. How and why, where, when, all of that coming in the next metaphor, the second part of our talk. Go on, Acha.
ദൈവത്തിന്റെ ഹിതത്തിനായിട്ട് നമ്മളെ തന്നെ സമർപ്പിക്കാൻ സാധിക്കാതെ വരുമ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞു ജാങ്കോ ഞാൻ പെട്ടു അല്ലെ. when we are not able to be in control of things, and then we see things doesn't seem the way we go, but submit ourselves to the glory of God. As we go on, we see the wedding metaphor. Wedding എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ തന്നെ നമുക്ക് ഈ നാട്ടിൽ വന്ന് ആ ഷട്ടറിന്റെ മുമ്പിൽ നിൽക്കുന്ന ഒരു ഫീലിംഗ് അല്ലെ. നാട്ടിൽ കല്യാണത്തിന് അറ്റൻഡ് ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്ന എത്ര പേരുണ്ട്? വി സ്റ്റാൻഡ് ദെയർ. കല്യാണം കഴിയുന്ന ഉടനെ ആ ഷട്ടറിന്റെ അവിടെ നിൽക്കുകയാണ്. പോക്കുന്ന ഉടനെ ഇടിച്ചു കയറി സീറ്റ് കിട്ടുന്ന പോലെ നിൽക്കുകയാണ് അല്ലെ. അപ്പൊ പലപ്പോഴും often
I've heard that after accidents in Kerala, the biggest cause of injury and death is actually standing in front for the reception after the wedding in Kerala.
Stampede.
Yeah. I've heard that.
അതെ. ഈ കല്യാണം എന്ന് പറയുമ്പം അല്ലെ, കല്യാണം ഉണ്ണാൻ പോകുന്നത് നമുക്കൊരു ഹരമാണ്. ഇറ്റ്സ് നാച്ചുറൽ ടു ഗോ പാർട്ടിസിപ്പേറ്റ് ഇൻ ദി ഊണ് ഫോർ ദാറ്റ്. പക്ഷെ കല്യാണം ഉണ്ണുന്നതിലും കല്യാണം കഴിക്കുന്നതിനെ കുറിച്ച് അറിയുന്നതാ കുറെ കൂടെ നമുക്ക് ആവശ്യം. കല്യാണം ഉണ്ടാ പോരാ, കല്യാണം ഉണ്ടാ പോരാ, കല്യാണം ഉണ്ണുന്നതും കഴിക്കുന്നതും തമ്മിൽ പിന്നെ തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും അല്ലേ? ചുമ്മാ കൈ വീശി വിശന്നിരുന്ന് ചിലരൊക്കെ രാവിലെ പട്ടിണി ഇരുന്നാൽ പോകുന്നു. നമ്മൾ കോളേജിലൊക്കെ ഉള്ള പിള്ളേരൊക്കെ ആയിരുന്നു ഗോയിങ് ഓൺ എം ടി സ്റ്റമക്. കല്യാണം ഉണ്ണുന്നതും കല്യാണം കഴിക്കുന്നതും തമ്മിൽ തീർച്ചയായും നല്ല വ്യത്യാസം.
ചിലരാണ് കല്യാണം കഴിക്കാൻ പോകുന്നത് കല്യാണം ഉണ്ണാൻ പോകുന്ന പോലെ അല്ലേ? കല്യാണം
അതെ,
ഉണ്ണാൻ
അതെ.
പോകാൻ പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് പ്രിപ്പറേഷൻ വേണ്ട, ഷർട്ടൊക്കെ ഇട്ട് പോയി നല്ല അടിപൊളിയായിട്ട് പോയി കഴിച്ചിട്ട് വന്നാൽ മതി എന്ന് പറയും. കല്യാണം ഉണ്ണാൻ പോകുന്ന പോലെ കല്യാണം കഴിക്കാൻ പോകുന്നവരുണ്ട് അല്ലേ?
Yeah. അതുപോലെ these sometimes maybe due to our leave and all that, നമ്മൾ ഇന്ന് വന്നു നാളെ പെണ്ണിനെ കണ്ടു മറ്റന്നാൾ ഉറപ്പിച്ചു അതിന്റെ പിറ്റേ ദിവസം കല്യാണം കഴിച്ചിട്ട് പോകുന്ന. But I think wedding needs a lot more preparation in that sense. The Jewish wedding, for example, is very interesting that we see here.
ശരിയാ.
It's got 3 stages that they say, the ancient Jewish weddings. So the first stage is that of that the Jewish stages of marriage, and that we see in Genesis chapter 31 is very interesting, and goes on to say there are 3 steps of Jewish marriage, and one is that of a contract or a betrothal, that we see in Genesis chapter 34 verse 12, also in Exodus 22 verses 17, and those are some examples that we see there. So there the terms of responsibility and പേയ്മെന്റ്, ഈ പണം ഇടപാടുകളൊക്കെ ഡിസ്കസ് ചെയ്യപ്പെടുന്ന ഒരു സ്ഥലമാണ്. ആൻഡ് there we see it is between the bridegroom and the bride's father. Okay. Now in the Jewish custom we see the thing that we call dowry is actually for the absence of the bride at home is what the payment is done. It could be done in
the father
cash.
is compensated for the absence of their daughter at home. That's the understanding of the bride price.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that we see. So adellam parnju orpikkunnu. So that is ellam set ആക്കുന്നു. And once you are in that contract, then if you move out of the contract, there are only 2 reasons. One is either caught for adultery, or the other one that we see is when there are 2 of those that we see there. And so second one endu.
Yeah. So there are 3 stages in the ancient Jewish wedding. One is the contract. So they mention the price, they agree on it, then there is some time. And the second part is the consummation. So the മൂന്ന് ഭാഗം കൂടെ കഴിഞ്ഞാലേ കല്യാണം കംപ്ലീറ്റ് ആകത്തുള്ളൂ. Second part is consummation. So the father builds a space for the bridegroom, and they both go and consummate their marriage in that bridal chamber, which is known as chuppa. So when we Maniyara ennulla vaakku, we keep hearing it in the Marthama wedding liturgy because it comes from a Syrian tradition, which is again very close to the Semitic tradition of the Jewish. So Maniyara, so that Maniyara is very important because after the contract, after some time, once they agree with all these things, they go for the consummation of the marriage. They have an intercourse, and apparently the intercourse over there is very important. The bridesmaid and the groomsmen stand a little far away just to make sure that the consummation happens, and they want to ascertain the bridal purity and all that. And that's how, it's ancient time. You have to suspend your judgments at this point of time, but it's a very old culture. And the bridal purity was so important for them because they had to justify the bride price, because bridal purity was one of the reasons for the bridal price being sometimes so high. So consummation is the second important this thing. And in the third session, the third aspect is the celebration. And that is where the Cana Galilee thing happens over there. Yeah. Celebration. And this celebration goes on for 7 days with a feast. So in Cana and Galilee, we see the third part of the celebration, and this is what completes that wedding. So contract, consummation, and after that, everybody is invited to come together for a feast, and guests are invited. They have to wear a particular wedding dress in order to come in, just like the bride and the bridegroom, and 7 days of feast happen. And this is where that happens. And then we see the lack of wine. Yeah.
Just adding on, the Mary and Joseph were in the first stage, അതാണ് പറയുന്നത്, അവൾക്ക് ലോകാപവാദം വരുത്താൻ അവന് താല്പര്യം ഇല്ലാഞ്ഞതുകൊണ്ട്. So Mary, we see that in the first stage. In the 10 virgins that we see, that I think is the second the consummation stage is where, yeah. That is where the അതാണ് അകത്ത് കയറി കഥ കടച്ചു പിന്നെ വന്നവരെ കേറ്റിയില്ല and all that. I think so. This is just for reference. So the second session അങ്ങനെ വരുന്നതാണ്. Third ആണ്, this is where the John 2.
So why did we mention this? When you look at the Bible, we see this metaphor superimposed on God's relationship with his people. Okay? God, because the covenant in Moses is the contract. So it's metaphorical. So for the Bible, God's relationship is always talked in terms of bride and bridegroom. ഈ കല്യാണത്തിനൊക്കെ നിൽക്കുമ്പോൾ രോമിച്ച കല്യാണത്തിനൊക്കെ നിൽക്കുമ്പോൾ ഉണ്ടല്ലോ അവിടെ പറയും ജാതിൻ പുത്രി നീയെ സുന്ദരി എന്നൊക്കെ പറയുമ്പോൾ അവിടെ നിൽക്കുന്ന പെൺകുട്ടി വിചാരിക്കും, ഓ എന്നെ കുറിച്ചാ പറയുന്നതെന്നൊക്കെ വിചാരിക്കും. ആക്ച്വലി the story, the ജാതിൻ പുത്രി നീയെ സുന്ദരി is about Manavati Sabha, the bride, which is the church, and Jesus, who is the bridegroom. And throughout, very interestingly, in Western marriages, you say like, do you agree to get married to this person for sickness and health and all of that? And then they say, I do, and then they kissed and they're pronounced, now I pronounce a man and wife. The contract is between the man and the woman, but in the Syrian Christian tradition, which continues with the Jewish tradition, it is between God and these two people. So in the Christian marriage, especially the Marthoma marriage, we see that just the way Jesus Christ, the bridegroom, loved and came down for the church, which is the bride, so should your relationship be between each other. And very interestingly, the cross, according to early theologians, and especially according to Saint Ephraim, Mar Ephraim, who's a lot of prayers that we use in our worship, the crucifixion is metaphorically understood as a consummation. So the contract was in the law, that God gave to the people, and the consummation where God brought closer and united with us by by dying on the cross. And then very interestingly, when is the celebration? That's what we find in Revelations chapter 19. In Revelations chapter 19, we see the verse where it says, chapter 19 verse 9, then the angel said to me, write this, blessed are those who are invited to the wedding supper of the Lamb. And he added, these are the true words of God. So the wedding supper of the Lamb, which we see in Revelations, is what to coming back of Jesus. So if we understand our relationship with Jesus in the light of this metaphor, God has made a contract with us so that we live with him, we're going to marry him. Jesus came down in flesh to consummate the marriage so that we can start living together. But the marriage fully isn't over yet. There is the celebration aspect, and that is in the very end. കർത്താവ് തിരികെ വരുമ്പോൾ കുഞ്ഞാട്ടിന്റെ കല്യാണ കല്യാണമല്ല കല്യാണ വിരുന്നിനാണ് ക്ഷണിക്കപ്പെട്ടിരിക്കുന്നത്. So we are called. So Jesus, that marriage process is not complete. It is a 3-stage marriage, and we are looking forward to that, which simply means what, Tomyacha? As we see in the story, that the celebration is going on, but we are still waiting. So for us as people, we are still in this world. The marriage is not complete, but the celebration is waiting. So Jesus will come back and has invited and will come back, and together there'll be the marriage feast, and that is the last times. But what happens? Well, let's come back to Cana and Galilee. Why are we saying all this? Why are we saying the 3 stages of marriage in Cana of Galilee? What is the importance of the wine being empty? Tell me, Tomyacha. We get prepared, right? There is something about preparation over there.
Yes. So when we say being prepared, in India, we were in the scout. So the main motto of the scouts and guides is be prepared. And when you go for an interview or when you go for anything, everybody says, be prepared for the worst. Be prepared for the worst. But the word is not telling us that. The word says, be prepared for the prepared. Yeah.
Whoa,
I
whoa,
say that
whoa,
again.
whoa. That is, what is that? What is that? I've heard of being prepared for the unprepared. What do you even mean by saying being prepared for the pre-prepared?
Yeah, Ephesians chapter 1 verse 3 പറയും ലോകാരംഭത്തിന് മുൻപേ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് വേണ്ടി ഒരുക്കപ്പെട്ടിരിക്കുന്ന രക്ഷയെ അവകാശമാക്കിക്കൊള്ളുവിൻ എന്ന് പറയും. Ephesians chapter 3 1 verses 3 says, blessed be the God and the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us in Christ with every spiritual blessing in heavenly places, even as he chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and blameless before him. In love, he predestined us for adoption to himself as sons and daughters through Jesus Christ, according to the purpose of his will, to be the praise of his glorious grace, with which he has blessed us in the beloved. Being prepared for the pre-prepared is something that is really important. ഇത് വായിക്കുമ്പോഴേ ഒരു ചെറിയ കൺഫ്യൂഷൻ വരുന്നത്, എല്ലാം പ്രീ ഡിസ്റ്റൈൻഡ് ആണ് എന്നുള്ള ഒരു ധ്വനി വരുന്നുണ്ട്. How do we clarify that?
Yeah, so here we see that, Ephesians chapter 5, the portion that we read just now, which is Ephesians chapter 1, 3 to 6, and even in John chapter 6. So like we said, Jesus knew what he's going to do. See, there's an end, we think predestination. No, one way of understanding the Bible is creation, fall, redemption. And that is a very common Protestant way of understanding creation, fall, redemption. But another, the Syrian tradition, the Orthodox tradition, and all that, have a different way of understanding. We understand that redemption was not an afterthought. Redemption was embedded in creation. We say, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. And in chapter 41, we see the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. I just want to quickly take you back to this. See, in the beginning was the Word. Jesus, the Word, was already there. So, and he was already there, and God created through the Word, and he was made flesh over here. So salvation, redemption was embedded into creation. Of course, some church fathers even go as far as saying that God knew that we would fall, but he had already prepared for us. So, kalyanam, that contract, consummation, and the final aspect of, celebration, God has prepared this for us, but we need to be prepared in order to receive what is pre-prepared for us. Now, let me give an instance. If we do not realize, so why should we be prepared for the pre-prepared? I'll tell you a story. And this is a story that our father used to tell us in Sunday school. The man gave the contract to build a big house. And he was a rich man. And so the contractor, the rich man said, I won't be around, so you know what the contractor did? He skimped on the material. He brought low quality material and built the house, a very shaky house. He inflated the price and gave the bill as a big bill, but the quality of the material, the cement, the steel, concrete, everything that was used was terrible. But you know what happened? After the house was built, the man came back and he gave it, the master came back and the contractor came to him and he said, here are the keys. Your house is for you. He built a terrible house, but it looks great, but all the materials are cheap. You know what the master said? The master said, actually, I wanted you to build this house for you. So I give you these keys. This house belongs to you. Now just imagine if this man knew that this house was meant for him, he would have built it in a very different way. But he was not prepared for the pre-prepared. The house was for him. The master built that house for that contractor. We don't know why, but he had it for him. But the problem here, he did not know about it. He was unprepared. He skimped on the material. So that is why we say we need to be prepared for the pre-prepared. And how does that work out in the story, Tomyacha? How does that pan out in the story?
I think the servants play a very important role here. Everything is over. But the obedience of the servants was something that is really key there. They were told, these guys came and said, the wine, we ran out of wine. And Jesus tells them, you fill these jars. He says, fill up those jars with water. Why? We are talking about drinking water and you're talking about washing water to wash hands. But what the servants do is something that is really important. Just obeying him, knowing who he is. Mary tells them, do whatever he asks you to do, and they just go. So the first thing that we see there is to be prepared. To prepare for the pre-prepared. Obedience is something that is really important, because believe that it is already prepared for us, and it is already given to us. Yeah, we just need to receive it, don't we? So for that, obey what the word tells us to obey. The second thing that we see is, what do you have to give? Yeah, when Jesus said that we ran out of wine, now Jesus is looking around and saying, looking at the servants and saying, what do we got here? Yeah. This we see in the feeding of the 5,000 also. There, there is a situation that people are hungry, and Jesus knows what he is going to do, but he asks them, so what do you have? What do you have is something that that constantly God asks us. Are you willing to give what you have? Yeah, the service element. He can do it all by himself, but no. He wants the participation of us. He wants us to be co-creators. He wants us to be participants in his grace, isn't it? The stone.
Absolutely. So how does God's verse 2, chapter 2, verse 11, it says, what does it say over there? And as a result, John is very categorical in writing over here in verse 11, which is our key verse for today. This, the first of his signs, Jesus did at Cana in Galilee and manifested his glory. My dear friends, God's glory is manifested in your lack, in your brokenness, in your uncertainty. This time is a broken window through which the glory of God will shine into this world. So if you are in a time of uncertainty, if you're in a time of, not being sure of things at all, we want to tell you that God's glory can shine on you if you have, my friends, obedience, and if you are ready to offer what you have, even if it's something as small as water. My plug. Isn't it, Tom Yatson? So we would like to bring you back to the imagery of the fountain. You can be the fountain of God's glory. While things are going wrong during this time, during this pandemic, you can be a fountain of God's glory by one, tuning into the glory of God that is surviving, and second one, by being obedient and offering what you have. My dear friends, these times are very uncertain. The times are very uncertain, but we need to keep on tuning into the certain. So Psalms 121 says, what does it say? I lift my eyes up to the hills. Where will my help come from? If you're not ready to lift your eyes up to the hills, say, glory be to the Father, to the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Remind yourself of that glory. When we do that, through our brokenness, God's glory shines. And there is a transformation. He does what is needful. He is present. And at the end of the wedding, they said, "Itre nalle veenu avasanamanu kodukkunnathu." Idokke aadyam kodukkendathalle. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? The presence of Jesus turned the whole thing around. Nobody knew, but he did what had to be done. What do you say, Tom? We're coming to a close. We've crossed our time. We're coming to a close.
Yes, so the question here now for us is on an application level. Can glow? The question is, can glow? Yeah. The, the answer is yes, if I let him in and out of me. Can I glow is a question. We are called, it's a call to be a house of Cana, the site where the glory of God is revealed. A call to be Canaan, the place, the promised land. A call to be the Calvary, where God's glory is revealed. A call to be a Christian. Are you ready to be? Can I glow? Are you ready to be a Christian through whom God's glory will be revealed? Let me quickly share how my life has been, how my life has been touched by this glorious God. We were really small, and my father was serving in a church outside of India, and through my birth, 5 months after I was born, I was detected with a disease, and there were a lot of rashes and all that, and they didn't know what the disease was, And fifth month, my parents were called to the doctor's room and said, you know, this child has another 15 days. Yeah, so you can make arrangements for this child to be taken back, maybe as a child or as a dead body. My parents told the doctors, you do what you can. And they said, we will do what we can. We will do what we can. They came back to the room and they held hands to each other and they prayed, Father, if you want this child for your glory, if you want this child for your glory, give him life. If not, Lord, let your will be done. Let your will be done. My friends, this was in my 5th month. I talk to you at my age of 33, saying, my God is mighty. My God is faithful, and he's so powerful. We cannot see beyond the point, but my Lord already has it all planned for me. But submit ourselves to the will of God and wait for him to work through your life. All we have to do is tune into him. Tune into him, my dear friends. Tune into him, to the glorious worship that is happening with his angels. Lord, help us to tune into you each day, tune into you every moment, and help us to live a life according to your will. As we move forward in life, can I glow is a question that comes back to us. My brother is here standing as a witness to what I have gone through, what our family has gone through. He was 3 and I was 5.5 months when this happened. With obedience, can we offer ourselves to the Lord? Can we offer ourselves to the Lord? Can we give what we have to him? Let it be stone vessels which are outside, which are not meant for cooking at all. But give ourselves to the Lord. Give what we have to the Lord. Be obedient to the Lord and tune into him. His glory will be revealed through us. Obedience of the servants. My friends, what do you have to offer to him today? What do you have to give to him today?
We close, my dear friends. We close over here. Thank you for this time. We hope you have received the 2 main emphasis that we wanted to give you. God has no tombstone. His glory continues to shine. And number 2, be prepared for the pre-prepared. We just have to tune into his glory, remind us, walk he wants us to. It's not the end, and he will lead us forward. May God bless us all. Sing it together. You can mute your mics and sing along. I'll play it from here. so that we continue, go back from here tuned to the glory of God by giving doxology, which means praise to God. Let's do it together, wherever you are. Whichever part of the world you're from today, let's sing this doxology together. Yennekum mahatum ega pita yennekum mahatum ega sudha ennumenne kume evam bhavekyate etatmavayunam etam studi. Glory be to God. Thanks to all actions. God bless you all. Thank you so much.